Have you ever felt a pain so deep it feels like your own body is betraying you? I'm not talking about a broken heart. I'm talking about a real physical agony, the kind that steals your breath and makes the world go blurry. That was me, lying on the cold tile of my own kitchen floor, a searing pain exploding in my chest. But the true betrayal wasn't the heart attack. It was the face of the paramedic, who looked down at me, a smug, familiar face that belonged to the man who was sleeping with my wife. He held my life in his hands, and he was in no hurry to save it. It all started so perfectly. 10 years with Sarah. We'd built a life in a quiet suburb of Chicago, on a street lined with oak trees. I worked in architecture, designing buildings meant to last a lifetime. I thought our marriage was built on the same foundation, but cracks had started to show, tiny fissures I'd tried to ignore. She started working late more often. Client dinners, she'd say, her texts becoming short and distant. She'd come home smelling of a cologne that wasn't mine and would flinch if I tried to touch her. The warmth we once shared had turned into a polite, icy distance. I felt like a stranger in my own home. The suspicion gnawed at me. It was a constant low-grade fever in the back of my mind. One evening after she'd claimed to be at a yoga class, I found a receipt in her coat pocket. It wasn't for a yoga studio. It was from the Aviary, a high-end cocktail bar on West Fulton Market. Dinner for 2, time-stamped just an hour ago. My blood ran cold. The next day, I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus. I needed to know. Checked our shared phone records, my hands shaking. There it was, dozens of calls and hundreds of texts to a number I didn't recognize. My heart hammered against my ribs. I typed the number into a search engine. The result popped up instantly. Mark Jennings, paramedic, Chicago Fire Department. A photo of him smiling in his uniform appeared on the screen. It was a face I'd seen before at a neighborhood barbecue a few months back. Sarah had introduced him as just a friend. The lies were a tangled web, and I was just starting to unravel them. That night I confronted her. I laid the phone records and the receipt on our polished dining room table. I watched as her face, the face I had loved for a decade, twisted into a mask of cold fury. There was no remorse, no apology, just anger. "Are you spying on me?" she hissed, her voice dripping with contempt. "This is why I can't stand being around you anymore. You're so suffocating, so needy." She told me it was my fault. My fault she sought comfort elsewhere. She said Mark understood her in a way I never could. He was exciting, a hero. And me, I was just the boring architect who paid the bills. The words were like daggers. She made me feel small, worthless. She and Mark felt untouchable, laughing at the pathetic husband behind his back. The humiliation was a physical weight, pressing down on me until I could barely breathe. That night was the worst of my life. I left the house, driving aimlessly through the rainy streets of Chicago until dawn. I parked by the lakefront, watching the gray waves crash against the shore, and I just broke. Sobbed, gut-wrenching sobs for the life I thought I had, for the woman I thought I knew. The grief was overwhelming. But as the sun rose, something inside me shifted. The grief hardened into a cold, diamond-hard resolve. They thought I was weak. They thought I was pathetic. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. Sarah wanted a divorce, but she wanted to take everything: the house, half my savings, my dignity. I wasn't going to let that happen. For the next 2 months, I played the part of the broken husband. I agreed to her demands. I went to therapy. I acted defeated. But in secret, I was building my case. I hired the best private investigator in the city. He was an ex-cop, discreet and efficient. He documented everything. Photos of Sarah and Mark checking into the Thompson Chicago Hotel. Recordings of their phone calls, where they openly mocked me and planned their future together with my money. The PI even discovered that Mark had a history of complaints against him at his station for misconduct, though nothing had ever stuck. Every piece of evidence was another nail in their coffin. I also met with a lawyer, a shark who specialized in hike-and-flick divorces. We planned every step. I moved my assets into protected accounts and set up a new place to live, all without Sarah knowing a thing. I was a ghost, moving silently in the background, preparing the stage for their downfall. The final act began on a Tuesday. It was the day of our 10-year anniversary. I woke up with a tightness in my chest, a dull ache that I dismissed as stress. Sarah was already gone, having left a curt note saying she was staying with a friend. I knew she was with him. The stress, the heartbreak, the sleepless nights, it all came to a head that afternoon. I was making coffee when the pain hit. It wasn't dull anymore. It was a crushing, blinding force that dropped me to my knees. My left arm went numb. I knew what was happening. I managed to crawl to my phone and dial 911, my voice a weak whisper. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, I heard the sirens, then heavy footsteps. The door burst open, and there he was, Mark Jennings. He knelt beside me, his expression not of concern, but of smug satisfaction. I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes, then a cruel smile played on his lips. "Well, well," he said, his voice low. "Looks like someone's having a bad day." He was slow, deliberate. He fumbled with the equipment. He asked me questions he already knew the answers to. "What's your name? Are you on any medication?" Each second was an eternity of agony. His partner seemed anxious, urging him to hurry, but Mark waved him off. "I've got this," he said, his eyes locked on mine. He was enjoying it. He was letting me suffer. It was in that moment, staring into the face of the man who had stolen my wife and was now stealing my life, that my plan crystallized into its final, brutal form. I didn't die on that kitchen floor. The other paramedic eventually took over and saved me. My revenge was quiet but absolute. While I was recovering in the hospital, my lawyer filed for divorce, presenting the mountain of evidence we had gathered. The infidelity clause in our prenup was ironclad. Sarah got nothing. Not the house, not a dime of my money. Her affair was laid bare in public court documents. But that wasn't enough. I sent a detailed, anonymous package to the Chicago Fire Department's Internal Affairs and the Illinois Paramedic Licensing Board. It contained the PI's report, Mark's history of misconduct, and a sworn affidavit from the other paramedic on the scene who had witnessed Marquez's deliberate delay in my treatment. His career was over. He was fired, his license was revoked, and he faced a criminal investigation. The last I heard, Sarah was working as a waitress, living in a tiny apartment on the far south side. Her friends had abandoned her, disgusted by what she had done. Mark was facing legal battles that would bankrupt him. They had destroyed my life, and in return, I had methodically dismantled theirs. I sold the house on the quiet, tree-lined street. I couldn't stand the memories. I moved into a sleek, minimalist apartment downtown, overlooking the river. It's quiet here. Sometimes late at night, I stand by the window watching the city lights glitter below. I don't feel happiness, or even satisfaction. It's just a profound, echoing emptiness. They took everything from me, and I took everything from them, and in the end, all that's left is the silence.